The lies of Vladimir Putin, they're just amazing. The Russian president and his advisors, they lie so often, so shamelessly, so spectacularly. They lie like I've seen nowhere else. I reckon they even give the North Koreans a run for their money. And there's something very sick going on here. Like now, blaming this war, its war in Ukraine, in part on a soup. Absolutely true. I'll show you. This is a war, apparently, on soup Nazis. Now, you'd sometimes think Russian lies are actually just a giant joke. A sick joke, of course, but, you know, they're just pulling our chain, messing with our mind. And how can you not believe that? When a Russian foreign ministry spokesman justifies Russia's horrific invasion of Ukraine partly because of borscht, a traditional Ukrainian soup made with beetroot and cabbage. This soup, in fact, which this Russian spokesman says, well, Ukrainian cookbooks, they're refusing to admit is actually Russian.
Ну и все, что связано было, как я уже сказала, с этникой, с культурой в первую очередь. Даже книги по кулинарии, они тоже запрещались. Почему? Потому что нельзя было делиться борщом. Ну нельзя, он должен был принадлежать только кому-то одному. Вот только кому-то одному, какому-то одному народу, одной национальности. А так, чтобы он был общий, и чтобы в каждом городе или в каждом регионе каждая хозяйка могла приготовить его по-своему, нет. На компромиссы идти не хотели. Так это и есть то, о чем мы говорим: ксенофобия, нацизм, экстремизм во всех видах.
Now, it seems like some sort of cosmic joke that Russia is literally blaming this war on Ukrainian soup Nazis. Even Seinfeld couldn't have dreamed up this plot twist. Except it's not actually funny, it's pathological. It's in fact exactly what you expect from an authoritarian regime like this one. Lies are actually a critical part of regimes like that. Sometimes even a strength. I mean, you've got Russia right now, like China. It can lie and lie about this war, knowing no one in its country dares to tell the truth. They would get jailed or fined or even shot, poisoned. And Russia knows that in the West there are Putin fans who need to hear something, anything really, any lie, to excuse their support for this killer. Any mad talking point will do. And in fact, Russia is supplying them. Industrial strength lies. Here are just 3 of Russia's lies in the past week. I think these are probably the top 3. You may have others. And I mean, these are lies just in the last week. I'm not talking about the earlier lies, you know, Ukraine is run by Nazis, Russia, they're not going to invade Ukraine. Russia isn't bombing civilian targets, even though, you know, daily bombs hospitals and clinics and railway stations and leaves housing blocks and suburbs in Ukraine totally destroyed. Now I'm talking about Russia's top lies just from the past week, the top 3. 1, the lie that Russia didn't fire the 2 missiles that last week killed more than 50 people, including children, at a railway station in Ukraine's Donbas region. No, said the Russian Defense Ministry, that wasn't us, that was the Ukrainians themselves, because we do not use this kind of missile, called the Toshka-U. Now, why is that obviously a lie? Well, because pro-Putin news sources were actually claiming credit for that missile strike until it turned out the dead weren't soldiers, but civilians. And then they quickly edited their posts, changed their mind, and just repeated the Putin line. And we also know it's a lie because Russia is indeed using Toshka missiles. True, they were being replaced by more sophisticated ones, but the Russians are running out of those, and Russian Toshka missiles, their launches were filmed last month moving into Ukraine from forward bases in Belarus. Just one example there. Lie number 2. No, it wasn't the Russians who murdered so many Ukrainian civilians in a town like Bucha. Massacres now being discovered that the Russian troops are being driven out. Massacres described also by eyewitnesses. No, said the Russians, these murders and executions and tortures and rapes, they're all by the Ukrainian army as well. Here is President Putin's spokesman last week lying through his teeth.
We're living in during a days of fakes and lies. We deny that Russian military can have something in common with these atrocities and with dead bodies that were shown on the streets of Bucha.
Once again, we know that's a lie because satellite pictures, for instance, show many of the same bodies lying in the streets of Bucha 2 or 3 weeks before the Ukrainian army could come in and liberate the town. They're lying there when the Russians were occupying it and, witness say, shooting people. And big lie number 3 of the week, well, that's the lie that the Russian army that was trying to surround Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, it wasn't beaten. The Russians weren't smashed by the Ukrainian army. They weren't driven out of northern Ukraine. Here again is Putin's spokesman.
Now, about 2 regions, Kiev and the Chernigov regions. So actually the troops were really withdrawn from that region as an act of a goodwill during the negotiations between 2 delegations.
Well, we know that's a lie as well, because if that was a peace gesture, withdrawing from Kyiv, why did the Russians keep firing missiles at Ukrainian cities in the east and the south? Fire missiles even at their railway station, filled with refugees. Lies, lies, and more lies. But I said that a Putin regime, say the same of a Chinese dictatorship, they can often have a big advantage with lies. They can tell lies to their own people without anyone daring to expose them and tell the truth. And that's big when you're trying to brainwash your public. You know, like, hey, this invasion of Ukraine, it's going marvelously. What a great idea of the president. But an empire of lies can also destroy itself. And right now, Putin seems to have found that out in a way that now threatens his own survival. 2 weeks ago, the Pentagon said its intelligence sources were telling it that Putin was blaming his advisors for the Russian debacle in Ukraine. Those advisors were too scared to tell him the truth. Too scared, it seems, to tell Putin truths like this. Mr. President, your war, it's nuts, it's going crazy. Disaster. Your claims the Ukrainians are just Russians waiting to be liberated from the Nazi leaders, that was insane, Mr. President. They're welcoming us not with flowers, but with missiles. Your army, by the way, is hopeless. Some of your generals are so corrupt, they've been stealing the money that was meant to equip your troops. Truths like that can't be told. And all of this should actually give us some hope, because there's been a lot of fretting in the West that the rise of authoritarian regimes like China and Russia, they're a threat, and they are, by the way. Fretting that authoritarians like Putin can make the West look weak and divided, and that also is true. Countries with free speech do tend to look divided. But as we see now, any regime built on lies, any regime where liars are protected, not exposed, and truth-tellers are jailed or killed, that regime, in the end, will fall. It will choke on those lies. And that liar, Vladimir Putin, is now proving this truth all over again.